Okay, everybody. So, what I'm going to talk about here is where we left off last time. So, we talked a little bit about the Enlightenment. And in talking about the Enlightenment, we looked at kind of the causes of the Enlightenment. Well, the causes of the Enlightenment come from the scientific revolution. It's kind of important to know this because the Enlightenment isn't really like a revolution. It's kind of like a revolution of process of thought, which is kind of deep. But what it really means is that people are going to kind of shift things a little bit, and you're going to get a situation where people are going to rely less on things like revelation or just plain old kind of like reasoning through things in their head and logic to kind of a much more scientific based way of dealing with stuff. So like you have with Isaac Newton, part of the scientific revolution, who's going to discover kind of the calculus. And Enlightenment thinkers are going to think, well, if you can find universal rules for the universe like physics, then maybe we can find universal rules for humanity. That's kind of their basic premise. So to do that, you got to figure out like how that happens. So Enlightenment thinkers first have to settle on what are human beings like and what's human nature. So we got three people we look at. First one is John Locke. Second one is going to be Thomas Hobbes. And the third one is Rousseau. In fact, I have that backwards a little bit. We're going to do Hobbes first. So looking at Hobbes kind of gets a bad rap because he is kind of known for supporting kind of like violence and kind of terror of your own population. And that's not really true. It's also really not true either. It's just that it's the way that Hobbes kind of looks at the world. So the first thing you got to think about here is, how does Hobbes see the world in like a state of nature? And Hobbes sees it like this. For Hobbes, human beings don't have this kind of divine authority that's making them move in a certain way. Now, in the Middle Ages, you can make this argument. But for Hobbes, it's not good enough. So for Hobbes, that argument, human beings don't have this. So human beings in a state of nature, or a place where human beings don't have culture or any knowledge of culture or morality or things that would keep them in line in general, you would be kind of a scary place to be. Because according to Hobbes, human beings naturally are self-centered and kind of brutish. So that if you were in complete chaos, complete freedom, human beings would just murder each other. And there would be really no progress. I make reference to it in the PowerPoint a little bit by the TV show Firefly, but I'm sure none of you have really seen it. So if you haven't, it doesn't really matter. What matters is this idea that if you have 1 million people in a state of nature, according to Hobbes, you have 1 million individuals against 1 million individuals. Human beings are man against man. So for him, this is chaos and terrible. However, he believes, though, that these human beings then come together, because without that, there's no progress. So human beings come together in that state of nature. And they create something called a social contract, where they give up some of this freedom to a leader. Now, a leader could be a tyrant, but what's more important is that the job of the leader in the social contract is to create order and stability. In other words, that leader just can't run around killing people at random for no apparent reason. But the leader can be really harsh. And in some ways, I use the Queen of Hearts, even though it's not the perfect analogy. See, the Queen of Hearts is exactly what it sounds like. The Queen of Hearts is a queen of cards. And cards have different numbers, they have different values, they have different colors, they have different, basically, clans or groupings. But you can't play any games with cards unless you put them in order. And you put them in the right order. And in a lot of ways, this is what Hobbes' world is like. You know, without order, there's nothing. These cards are meaningless. So, what Hobbes is saying is that what you need somebody who's going to be harsh like that, to be able to create order. And from that, you get this book called The Leviathan. The Leviathan is this giant sea monster that has its tentacles all over the place. The reason why Hobbes says this is because he believes that in order to keep that order, the government has to get out and to be able to make sure there's stability throughout the land. So though he's saying that, yes, it can be terrorizing or strike fear, it's about the idea of stability. And more importantly, what Hobbes says is, human beings create the social contract that gives power to govern. And the next person we look at, which is John Locke, is going to take that one step further and say under that social contract, human beings have natural laws and natural rights. And if they have natural rights, a leader that tramples on those natural rights can be overthrown.